We're going to wrap up the morning show program this morning with Jennifer Fitzpatrick. Jennifer has got a book out called Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved Ones. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and great information in this book. And I know that you got a lot of things that you want to talk about, especially with caregiving. Statistic-wise, tell us how many people are caregivers in the United States?
Yeah, there's about 40 million Americans who are caregiving, and this is, of course, as you know, Don, a particularly tough time for family caregivers.
Yeah, you can feel like if you're a caregiver that there's just too many things, too many plates spinning, and give us some advice on how we can kind of slow that down a little bit.
So right now, it's kind of tough. My typical advice is try to engage as many people in your friend and family network as part of what I call your caregiving crew in Cruising Through Caregiving. Right now, that can be really challenging because of all these different guidelines, all this different changing information. But what I suggest is right now, during this time, think about when things get to a new normal. If you're taking care of your loved one at home, you are probably getting really burnt out. I want you to be thinking about, what are you going to do differently when we get to a new normal? How can you engage friends and family and neighbors in your care? But right now, what can you do? If your loved one is very high risk and you're not venturing out too much, one way to perhaps engage your loved one more is simply get friends and family and neighbors to call your loved one. Or if your loved one is good with technology, to do a Zoom call or a FaceTime call. Just having a little bit of interaction, even if they're not venturing out at this point because they're vulnerable, that can do a world of good to get your loved one engaged with others. Isolation is a big problem with the lockdowns and with us limiting our contact with others.
Mm-hmm. Really, when you're taking on commitment of maybe with a parent, having them move in, there's a lot of other things to think of, and it's probably more of a total family involved with that, and also information from your book that may help you guide your way through that.
Well, it should be. It should be a whole family effort. But, Don, you know what's interesting? In a lot of families, it's not. It's usually one or two people doing the bulk of the work. And I have a couple of exercises. If you go to cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, you can download all the exercises from the book in the first chapter for free. But I think if you're going to move your loved one, I have a whole chapter on should you move your loved one in? Does it make sense? Or does bringing home care in make sense? Or maybe moving to senior living? What makes sense? Because for every family, every caregiving situation, there's no right way to do it. There's just a lot of different options. And I think every family has to decide what makes the most sense for their loved one, but also for the other people in the family unit. Say, a lot of times people say, I'm only a good daughter if I move mom in. Well, is that going to have an impact on your marriage? Is that going to have an impact on your kids, especially if you're homeschooling? So I think it's definitely important to consider all of that.
Yeah, and when you do that as well, too, I think you have to make sure that what happens if you're caring for a loved one that has dementia. You've also got some information in the book that will help us with that.
Right. So it's a whole different ballgame when your loved one has a dementia diagnosis. You are ultimately, it's going to be a long road. On average, somebody can live with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. Some dementias move more quickly than others, but you really want to know that you're going to be in it for the long haul. So a lot of times people say, well, I promise I'm going to keep my mom at home forever or my husband at home forever. And you can't always do that. Because when somebody's in the later stages of Alzheimer's or any of the other dementias, it becomes physically taxing. The person is no longer able to feed himself or get to the bathroom, or they become incontinent, or there's issues as far as wandering when somebody's in the mid stages. Whenever you see silver alert come on your phone or on the highway, that means that somebody who has dementia has wandered away from their home or driven away from their home, and this happens every single day in the United States. So, when somebody gets to it around mid stages of dementia, you really can't leave that person alone. It's like I say to people, would you leave a 3-year-old alone? And if you say no, then, the person with dementia is an adult. They're a grown-up. But if you wouldn't leave a 3-year-old alone and you wouldn't be sure that they could find their way back to the house, you really shouldn't leave somebody with dementia alone.
And we're speaking with Jennifer Fitzpatrick, Generations expert and author of Cruising Through Caregiving, reducing the stress for caring of your loved one. Finally, Jennifer, I want to kind of go back to the caregiver here. There has to be some signals, and you need to look for some signals when you might be getting a little lost in caregiving. So if caregiving is the only thing that you have in your life, to me, that's a big sign of caregiver burnout. When you're resenting your loved one, when you're angry all the time. I have an assessment in Cruising Through Caregiving, and again, you can download that free at cruisingthroughcaregiving.com on how to assess where you are. Are you in burnout? Are you in what I call martyr syndrome? But resenting your loved one, being, if caregiving is the only thing in your life, think about people that you know that are, the only thing they have in their life is work, and that's it. They don't make time for friends or family or their relationship or exercise. And you think about when those people retire, they are so miserable because the only thing they had in their life was work. When somebody's caregiving and that's the only thing that they have in their life, a lot of times the person does pass away that you're caring for, and then you're left with a very empty life. A lot of caregivers struggle once their loved one passes away. They feel like they don't have a role anymore. So what I want to just encourage all those family caregivers out there to do is please, 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 if you feel like you are, the only thing that you have in your life is caregiving, just challenge yourself to do 1 hour in the next week for you. Whatever that means for you, if that means reading a book, if that means taking an hour-long walk, if that means, going to get your nails done. I'm not sure if where you guys are, you can get your nails done yet, but 1 hour, just 1 hour, if you really feel like caregiving is the only thing in your life, and then the next week, an hour. Don't hesitate. Right now, home care agencies are working. You can bring in help if you need help. So I think it's really important to just look at that. The other thing I want your listeners to know is there's a nonprofit that I'm on the board of called HFC, and it was founded by the actor Seth Rogen and his wife, writer Lauren Miller Rogen, and the website is wearehfc.org. If your loved one has Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, they offer respite care grants free for people to get help in the home for their loved one. And so I recommend if you need help and you can't afford it, I recommend applying on that website. It's wearehfc.org. First book is Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved Ones. Jennifer, thank you very much. Congratulations on the book and your success, and thank you very much for the information this morning.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.